What's up, Guardians? Profane here. Thanks for checking out the video. It's not often that I make a video praising a Titan build. I just have a natural affinity towards the Hunter and Warlock classes. But when the Pyrogale Gauntlets were introduced this season, my curiosity was triggered. This new exotic modifies Burning Maul into a one-shot super that deals out an incredible amount of damage. In addition to an overpowered one-shot super, cyclones will be created from each of the 3 waves that are generated when casting Burning Maul. Cyclones will also be created when executing a charged Consecration Slam. This new exotic gives Titans something that hunters have been dreaming about for ages, an updated Celestial Nighthawk. As it stands right now, the Pyrogale Gauntlets allow Solar Titans to deal out more damage than a Thundercrash with Cuirass, and more damage than a Gathering Storm with fully charged Star Eaters. In a recent DPS test against the Grasp of Avarice Ogre, the Thundercrash with Cuirass generated around 550,000 points of damage. That's without any damage bonuses like Surges or a Well of Radiance. But it does include the 30% debuff provided by Tractor Cannon, which was used during each damage test. The Pyrogale, however, consistently exceeded 800,000 points of damage under the exact same conditions as the Cuirass Thundercrash. I was shocked. The Pyrogale flat out embarrassed the performance of the Thundercrash.
Oh, are you serious? I think he fucking shattered it.
After seeing that, I started wondering how this new super compares to another of Destiny's highest DPSing supers, a Gathering Storm with Star Eaters. So I grabbed my Hunter and I put it to the test, and I was surprised yet again to see that the Pyrogale still outperformed the Star Eaters by more than 100,000 points of damage. So how exactly have the Pyrogale Gauntlets turned this mediocre roaming super into the strongest one-shot super in Destiny? Well, let's take a deeper look into this exotic.
Well, we're waiting.
The Pyrogale Gauntlets provide the intrinsic trait called Percussive Flames. This modifies the standard Burning Maul into a single-use slam that creates 3 solar waves on impact. The slam itself deals out 650% more damage than a single slam from the standard Burning Maul. Each of the 3 solar waves will scorch enemies, with each burst of Scorch applying 200 points of damage. This gets applied every 0.2 seconds, over a span of 15 total seconds. Each solar wave creates its own cyclone, which will track down nearby enemies. The damage of these cyclones will overlap, with each cyclone dealing out 20 points of base damage every 0.2 seconds, and applying an additional 3 points of Scorch every half second. Each cyclone will remain active for a total of 15 seconds, which is going to seem like an eternity to those bosses.
I got you for 3 minutes! 3 minutes of heat time!
What really sets this super apart from a Thundercrash is the damage over time provided by the Scorch and Cyclones. They account for so much of the overall damage. And since this new super can be quickly triggered and used at the start of a damage phase, you'll be able to transition right into your DPS weapon rotations, maximizing your efficiency against those raid, dungeon, and nightfall bosses. On top of all of the benefits that the Pyrogale provides your super, the benefits to your Consecration Slam is equally as impressive. Every time you perform a Consecration Slam, you get a mini cyclone that scorches and applies continuous damage for a total of 8 seconds, giving you a massively overpowered melee attack on top of those bonk hammers. So yeah, put down your Cuirass, your Loreley, and your Syntheseps, and put on the Pyrogale Gauntlets, which are available through Legend and Master Law sectors, or Vex Strike Forces. One of the most significant features of the Pyrogale Gauntlets is that it synergizes perfectly with Solar 3.0 verbiages, and with the right choice in our Solar subclass, we can improve the damage of this one-shot super and Consecration Slam. This cohesion starts with the use of the Roaring Flames aspect. After defeating an enemy with any solar ability, you'll receive a 20-second Roaring Flames buff. This can stack 3 times, providing you with an incremental increase in solar ability damage, increasing the damage inflicted by bonk hammers, consecration slam, and our super. This bonus in damage starts at 20% with 1 stack, 44 with 2 stacks, and a whopping 73% bonus ability damage when at times 3 Roaring Flames. While Roaring Flames is active, any non-charged melee attacks will apply 30 points of Scorch and count as a powered melee. This will create orbs when using the heavy-handed mod. Using bonk hammers is ultimately one of the most efficient ways to maintain Roaring Flames. Biting, of course, you don't toss your hammer too far out of reach. I find it best to use the bonk hammers to charge up Roaring Flames, and then follow that up with a Consecration Slam. If you've equipped the hands-on helmet mod, you'll get additional super energy out of each enemy defeated from bonk hammers and Consecration Slam, allowing you to perform that overpowered super far more often. To improve our melee regeneration, we are using the Ember of Searing Fragment, which restores between 8 and 25% melee energy whenever we scorch enemies. This is based on enemy rank, with rank and file enemies providing 8% and tier 4 enemies like champions providing 25%. Ember of Ashes provides a 50% increase to all Scorch stacks, allowing us to apply more damage and create ignitions faster whenever using our super or our melee. Another crucial fragment to use is Ember of Torches. This will increase the weapon damage of everyone in the fire team whenever we strike an enemy with a charged melee. This will synergize great with Roaring Flames, because as long as Roaring Flames is active, we can maintain Radiance, which would normally expire after 8 seconds. While we are Radiant, we will have a 25% increase to all weapon damage, and they will have the ability to pierce barrier shields. Our final choice in Fragments is one that will keep orbs of power generated so that you and allies can maintain armor charges, and to activate different armor mods that we'll get into here soon. We're using Ember of Wonder. Defeating at least 2 targets with an ignition creates an orb of power. Ember of Char would make a great alternative fragment if you're content with your orb generation already. Ember of Char will cause ignitions to spread Scorch to nearby opponents. But ultimately, since we have the Cyclones going thanks to the Pyrogale Gauntlets, I found that this fragment is more redundant than anything. Before we jump over to the other areas of this build, I want to wrap up our subclass tree by discussing grenade options. I find it best to treat each encounter and each activity differently when it comes to our grenades, especially when on a solar build. Grenades are a great source for additional boss damage, especially when Roaring Flames is active, and they're great for ad clear. But when you find yourself in more challenging content, a healing grenade can not only be a lifesaver to you, but to a teammate as well. And now let's move over to our armor. We already talked about the benefits of hands-on, but a helmet siphon mod will also be a great addition to create extra orbs to keep those armor charges active. But I find the heavy-handed gloves mod and the Ember of Wonder to be more than efficient, which can then free us up to use multiple hands-on mods or an ammo finder mod. Impact Induction will go great with this build's focus towards melee abilities, as it will generate 20% extra grenade energy when striking an enemy. This does incur a 7-second cooldown and can provide as much as 25% with the use of 2 mods. To make use of those armor charges, we are using weapon surges on our boots to match whatever our current weapon loadout is. This will add an extra 10, 17, or even 22% bonus damage that will stack on top of many of the other damage bonuses. Another option to be able to maintain your melee energy and utilize those armor charges would be to run melee kickstart, but that does interfere with weapon surge mods. Sticking with our boots, I don't find that this build really needs the Invigoration mod in order to get bonus melee energy off of collecting orbs, but it can benefit from having Better Already or Recuperation to get health back when collecting orbs. On our class item, we are using a combination of the Distribution mod and the Outreach mod to grant additional energy to all of our abilities when casting our Barricade. We're using powerful attraction so that any orbs that get generated from either us or teammates will automatically be drawn to us when we cast our barricade. Since this build isn't really designed around the seasonal artifact, I don't want to waste too much time going into each of its mods, but even still, there are 2 mods in particular that are worth mentioning, both of which are in the far right column. Rapid Fire Ranger, which inflicts a 15% debuff against enemies who are at least 45 meters away. And Monochromatic Maestro, which is going to provide a 10% bonus in damage to both your abilities and weapons, which is going to stack on top of any other damage bonuses that we've already got going on. With class tree and armor out of the way, let's talk about weapon loadouts. We've got a few obvious selections for you to choose from, and a few standouts that you might not have expected. As mentioned earlier, the Tractor Cannon debuffs enemies by 30%, an essential requirement in dealing out maximum damage.
Maximum effort.
But it's only needed by 1 member of your team, leading us to other heavy options like the Lament, one of the single greatest DPS weapons in up-close scenarios, or the Legend of Acreus. The Witherhoard is also another great option to provide an additional source at damage over time. But then there's also the Parasite. Certainly not a meta choice, but it deals out a massive burst of damage in one shot, and it buffs the damage of your other weapons afterwards. So if you're running a DPS focused shotgun, just as an example, like Until Its Return or the Aikilos shotgun, you would deal out 15% bonus damage on top of the effects from Surrounded, Trench Barrel, or 1-2 Punch. Weapons with Grave Robber or Pugilist will be fantastic options to be able to reload those weapons after melee kills, or to be able to recharge your melee after weapon kills. This is also why the Monte Carlo will make one of the most effective exotic combinations, so that you can have an infinite supply of Consecration Slams. Ultimately, you'll want to change your weapon loadouts based on the activity that you're in, but when you have an overpowered super and a melee attack that's going to melt anything that walks, you'll have a lot more flexibility in those weapon rotations. And with that being said, burning Maul isn't always going to be the most efficient super. Sometimes you'll have bosses that are far away, like Oryx in Kingsfall, but when you're facing a big, up-close boss like Crota, Nezarec, Rolk, and many others, the Pyrogale is now the undisputed DPS king of Destiny 2.
What does high score mean? New high score, is that bad? What does that mean?
And with that, we have covered all the ins and outs of this magnificent Solar Titan build, featuring the Pyrogale Gauntlets. I'd love to hear your thoughts about this new exotic, if you've gotten them already or not, and if you have, what your impressions were. Let us know down in the comments below. If you're still in need of these, be sure to keep an eye out on Lost Sectors on days that gloves are the available exotic. To which I wish you all the best of luck out there throughout the rest of this week and this season. Thank you as always for checking out today's video. If you enjoyed and found it helpful, then please be sure to hit that like button below, along with the subscribe button if you're new. Both are greatly appreciated and both really do help support the channel. If you want to go a step further to support the channel, you can visit the newly opened merch store or my Patreon site, which both are included in links in the description below. If you're a new Light Guardian, a returning Guardian, or a battle-hardened veteran just looking for a new place to call home, check out the Discord link and join one of the greatest communities in all of Destiny. And until next time, Guardians, this has been Profane, wishing you all some happy hunting.